Welcome, dreamer. I'm here to help you drift into calm, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and which story you'd love to hear next. I never imagined that cleaning other people's messes would teach me so much about my own life. My name is Lauren Pierce, and in the fall of 2013, I was barely hanging on in the town of Hanson Ridge, Wisconsin. A quiet, fading place where the winters were long, the factories were dying, and every neighbor knew your business no matter how hard you tried to keep to yourself. At 29 years old, I had nothing to show for my life except a damaged credit score, a string of short-lived jobs, and a loneliness that clung to me like an old coat. My last stable job, waitressing, ended after my manager caught me slipping leftover food to a homeless teenager behind the dumpster. Corporate called it theft. I called it being human, but the world didn't care what I called it. It cared about rules. Bills piled up. Rent notices went from yellow to red. I needed work fast, any work. That's how I ended up at Ashwood Manor, a mid-range hotel just off Highway 11. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even particularly clean, but it was willing to hire someone with a blemished record, and that was all I needed. I told myself it would be temporary, a few months, maybe less. But life rarely follows the timelines we set for it. The morning everything changed was October 9th, heavy with early frost. My car wouldn't start, again, so I walked the mile to the hotel, hands shoved deep into the pockets of my thin jacket. The sky was a pale, washed-out gray, the kind that looked like it had forgotten how to be blue. Inside the lobby, the coffee machine was sputtering its last drops, and the faint smell of bleach wafted through the hallways. It felt like every other morning. "Lauren, you're late," my supervisor, Mrs. Darla Whitford, said sharply as soon as I clocked in. "It's the car," I muttered, brushing ice off my sleeves. She pursed her lips. "Everything's an excuse with you. I need the second floor done by noon, and stay away from room 223. Guest requested privacy." "Got it." I didn't think twice about the warning. Guests asked for privacy all the time. Usually it meant they didn't want a maid seeing how messy or embarrassing their room was, but later I would wish I'd asked more. By 9:30 a.m., I was cleaning room 217, scrubbing the bathtub when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging, not the usual hurried shuffle of guests. I froze. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. "Hello?" I called, wiping my hands on my apron. "Someone there?" Nothing. I stepped out into the hallway. Empty. I shook off the unease. "You're tired, Lauren." Tired people hear things. But the feeling lingered like a shadow behind me. When I reached the supply closet, Miguel, one of the maintenance guys, was already there. A quiet man in his 40s with tired eyes and hands rough from years of work. "You hear someone on the second floor?" he asked suddenly. I stopped mid-reach. "Why? You heard it too?" He hesitated. "A man. Tall. Gray hoodie. Keeps walking around, but when I try to talk to him, he's gone." I felt a prickle crawl up my neck. "You think he's in one of the rooms?" Miguel shook his head slowly. "I think he's not supposed to be here." Before I could ask more, Mrs. Whitford's voice echoed down the hall. "Lauren, room 230 next. Chop chop." I sighed. "Another time." But Miguel's worried eyes followed me. At 11:15 a.m., I walked past room 223, remembering the privacy request. But something about the door made me pause. The "Do Not Disturb" sign swung lightly, even though there was no draft. A faint sound, like shuffling, came from inside. I leaned closer. "Housekeeping," I whispered. No response. I put my ear to the door. This time I heard it clearly. Crying. Soft, strained crying. A woman's voice. Terrified. My stomach clenched. I knocked harder. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Still no reply. The crying stopped abruptly, as if cut off. I backed away slowly, heart thudding. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was the TV. But something inside me whispered, "Someone is not okay." By 12:30 p.m., I was finishing up room 230 when the feeling of being watched washed over me so strong it made my throat tighten. I turned toward the doorway. A man stood at the end of the hallway, tall, rigid. dressed in dark clothes that looked damp. His head tilted slightly as if he wasn't sure what I was. "Sir?" I called, forcing calm into my voice. He didn't move. "Can I help you?" He stepped closer, and I instinctively stepped back into the room. Up close, I saw his face, expressionless, eyes wide and unblinking, like he hadn't slept in days. "My room," he said slowly, voice rough. "Clean it." "Which room number?" He stared at me for a moment too long, then smiled faintly. 223. My stomach dropped. That room requested no service. His smile widened unnaturally. "Clean. It." A cold shiver shot through me. "I can't go in unless—" But he stepped closer, voice dropping into an eerie whisper. "She needs help." My breath caught. "Who?" But he turned abruptly and walked down the hall, vanishing around the corner without a single sound. I felt rooted to the floor. She needs help. The crying. The privacy sign. Room 223 suddenly felt like a pressure behind my ribs. At 1:45 p.m., unable to shake the dread, I stood in front of room 223. Hand trembling, I knocked. "Housekeeping." Silence. Another knock. "Ma'am, if someone inside is hurt or needs assistance, I'm going to have to—" The door creaked open, on its own, just a few inches. Enough for me to see that the lights inside were off. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, but I pushed the door open. Slow. The smell hit me first. Stale air. Something metallic. Something rotten. "Hello," I whispered, flicking the light switch. Nothing. The room was dark, curtains drawn tight. I stepped inside. My heart thudded against my ribs as I scanned the shadows. A suitcase lay open on the floor. Clothes scattered. A purse on the desk. Someone had been here, recently. Then I saw her. A woman sitting on the edge of the bed, head bowed, long hair covering her face. My breath hitched. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't move. I stepped closer, knees weak. "Ma'am!" In one sharp motion, her head snapped up. I gasped. Her face was bruised, swollen, eyes bloodshot from crying. But what terrified me most was the panic in her voice. "He's here," she whispered. "Don't let him—" Something slammed into the door behind me. I spun around. The man from the hallway, his face twisted in rage. "You shouldn't be here," he snarled. My voice cracked. "Please, I was just—" He lunged. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The woman screamed. The man reached for something in his pocket. Metal glinted. A knife. "Stop!" I screamed. "Please don't!" He grabbed my arm, fingers bruising, breath hot on my face. "You ruined everything," he growled. I kicked wildly, hitting the nightstand. The impact sent the phone crashing to the floor. The woman sobbed, "Run!" But I couldn't move. Then, footsteps thundered in the hall. Miguel burst in, swinging a heavy wrench. "Get off her!" Metal met bone with a sickening crack. The man staggered, dropping the knife. I tore free, gasping for air, collapsing near the bed. Miguel grabbed my hand. "Lauren, go! Now!" I scrambled into the hallway with the woman as Miguel wrestled the man, shouting for help. Within minutes, staff swarmed. Police arrived. The man, Evan Caro, was arrested on the spot. The woman, Hannah Lewis, had been missing for 4 days. Kidnapped, held captive, forced to move hotel to hotel. She survived because someone finally opened the wrong door. Or the right one. I spent weeks shaking, months waking up at night hearing footsteps outside my room. But counseling helped. Hannah's recovery helped. Miguel being honored publicly helped. Ashwood Manor still stands, but I left the job. I started training as a trauma support aide. People like Hannah need someone who understands fear from the inside. Last month I got a letter. Evan Caro was appealing his sentence. He wanted leniency. For a moment I felt that old panic creep in. But I'm not that scared broke Maid anymore. I'm stronger. And if Evan ever tries to find me again, he'll learn the hard way that I survived for a reason. Story 2. I was 16 this summer. Everything in my life changed. Though if you'd asked me then, I would have said nothing ever changed in our tiny corner of Ravenwood Lane. a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania. It wasn't the kind of place where interesting things happened. Kids biked in circles, neighbors watered their lawns at the same time every evening, and the biggest drama was when someone's dog barked too late at night. But things were different inside our house. My dad, Mark Hollister, ran a small HVAC repair business and worked from sunrise to sundown. My mom, Rebecca, worked night shifts at St. Clair Medical Center, sometimes coming home so exhausted she'd fall asleep still wearing her scrubs. My older brother, Toby, was 18 and barely home anymore, always at work or with his girlfriend. And my little sister, Julia, was 10 and constantly glued to YouTube videos. And then there was me, 16, invisible, and constantly in the middle of everyone else's chaos. So when Mom announced we were hiring a live-in maid, no one even questioned it. We were desperate for help. "She'll cook, clean, help with Julia," Mom said, rubbing her temples. "Her name's Lena. A friend from work recommended her." I didn't think much of it, not at first. Lena arrived on a warm June afternoon. I remember standing by the window watching a small rideshare car pull into our driveway. The woman who stepped out looked almost too fragile for the heavy suitcase she carried. Mid-20s maybe, with long dark hair braided tightly down her back, wearing a worn gray sweater even though it was nearly 80 degrees. When she walked inside, she kept her head bowed. "Hello," she whispered softly, her accent noticeable but gentle. "I am happy to work here." Mom gave her a reassuring smile. "We're happy to have you. Your room is this way." Lena followed her down the hall, clutching her suitcase to her chest the way someone might hold a child. I remember thinking, she looks sad. Not shy. Sad. That was the first thing. The second was her eyes. They were always scanning corners, doorways, shadows, like she was checking if something followed her. For the first few days, things were normal. Better than normal, actually. The house felt cleaner, calmer, lighter. Mom called her a blessing. Dad said she was hardworking and quiet, the best kind of help. But I noticed something no one else did. She barely slept. I'd get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and see a faint light coming from the laundry room. Lena would be in there folding clothes with trembling hands, humming some soft, mournful melody that made my skin prickle. And every night she whispered the same thing under her breath. "Not now. Please, not now." I didn't tell anyone at first. I convinced myself she was just homesick, until the night everything changed. It was almost 1:50 a.m. I remember because I just finished a late video call with a friend and was settling into bed when I heard it. A woman crying, soft, broken, almost like she was trying not to be heard. At first I thought it was Mom. She cried sometimes when she was stressed. But then I listened closer. The crying was coming from the far end of the hallway, from Lena's room. I opened my bedroom door quietly. The house was dark, completely still. "Lena," I whispered. The crying stopped instantly. I froze. Then I heard something move, a sharp, sudden shifting, like someone jerking backward, followed by a low whisper in a language I didn't understand. I backed into my room and shut the door. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning at breakfast, I finally told Mom. "She cries at night," I said quietly. Mom glanced up from her coffee. "Who?" "Lena. I think she's scared of something." Mom sighed. "Sweetheart, she's far from home. She's probably lonely." "Lonely people don't whisper to something in the dark," I said. Dad looked up from his tools. "What does that mean?" Before I could answer, Lena walked in carrying a basket of folded laundry. The second she sensed we'd been talking about her, she froze. Her eyes were red. Her voice small. "I am okay," she murmured. "Just homesick." But the way she said it made my stomach twist, because it sounded like a lie. 2 nights later, my dad saw it first. It was around 9 p.m. Dad was in the garage fixing a broken shelf, and Lena was in the kitchen washing dishes. Toby and I were watching TV with Julia when Dad shouted, "Who's in the hallway?" We all turned. The hallway was empty. Dad came around the corner, pale and sweating. I saw someone walk past me. A woman, dark hair, right toward the back bedrooms. Mom frowned. "It must have been Lena." "No," Dad said firmly. Lena was at the sink. I was looking straight at her. A chill spread through me. Lena stepped out from the kitchen, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please, I don't follow it. Don't call it. Don't see it." Mom blinked. "See what?" Lena's entire body shook. "My guardian," she whispered. "It follow me always." "Guardian?" Dad snapped. "What? You mean someone snuck into our house?" She shook her head violently. "No human," she choked out. "It protect me, but it angry, it lonely. It follow me everywhere I go, and it does not want me leave." The room went so still I swear I could hear my own heartbeat. "What does it want?" I whispered. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "It cries," she said softly. "Every night. Same time, same way. But now, it cry here too." Julia hid behind me, whimpering. Dad swallowed hard. "Pack a bag. We're leaving." We stayed in a cheap motel off Highway 47 that night. All of us squeezed into one room. The air smelled like cigarettes and bleach, but I'd never felt safer. Mom paced the room, muttering, "A spirit? A guardian? What is she talking about?" Dad didn't say anything. He just stared at the door like he expected it to open on its own. Around 2 a.m., when everyone else was finally asleep, I sat upright in bed because I heard it, faint, almost impossible to catch. A woman crying, not from our room, not from the hallway, from inside my mind. I covered my ears, squeezing my eyes shut. But the crying didn't stop. The next morning, Dad made calls. By noon, a man pulled up to our house in a beat-up tan van. He introduced himself as Mr. Calder, a spiritual cleanser recommended by one of Dad's coworkers. He carried a small leather bag, a bundle of sage, and a silver pendant shaped like an eye. "I've dealt with things like this before," he said quietly. "Let me see the room she stayed in." When he entered Lena's room, he stopped immediately. The air felt colder, heavy, like the walls were pushing inward. Mr. Calder whispered, "It attached itself to her. Something old, something sorrowful. It followed her across an ocean." Dad swallowed. "Did it follow us?" Mr. Calder shook his head. "No, but if you stay long enough, it will." He lit the sage, muttering under his breath, sprinkling salt along the door, the corners, the baseboards. He left the pendant hanging from the closet knob. "This will keep it from lingering," he said. "But she, your maid, she needs help, real help. Whatever follows her, it will not stop." Lena left 2 days later. Mom helped her pack. Dad drove her to the airport. She hugged me and Julia before she left, her face wet with tears. "I sorry," she whispered. "I bring sadness with me. I did not want to." She squeezed my hand. "If you ever hear crying again, do not answer it." Then she walked away, her small figure swallowed by the airport crowd. We never heard from her again. The house felt lighter afterward. The shadows weren't as dark. The nights weren't as heavy. Dad removed the pendant after a month, and life slowly went back to normal, or as normal as it could. But sometimes, only sometimes, on quiet nights when the house is still, I wake up at 1:50 a.m., and I swear I hear it. A soft, distant, broken weeping. Not loud, not threatening, just, lonely. And every time I remember her final words, "Do not answer it." So I never do. Story 3, I never used to think much about business trips. For most of my adult life, travel was just another boring line on the job description, something I tolerated but never enjoyed. But in the fall of 2011, a single work trip made me rethink the whole idea of leaving home at all. My name is Evan Keller, and back then I was 34, working as a regional account rep for a packaging supply company in Tucson, Arizona. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. Stable enough to pull me out of the unstable childhood I grew up in. My dad bounced between warehouse jobs. My mom worked nights at a laundry plant until her health gave out. Money was always tight. There were months the fridge was nearly empty and the electricity bill sat unopened on the kitchen table because paying it would mean we couldn't pay for groceries. I spent most of my teenage years promising myself I'd never repeat the same cycle if I could help it. And for the most part, I kept that promise. By 34, I had a small house of my own, a car that didn't break down every other month, and a girlfriend who kept me grounded. Life wasn't perfect, but it was far from the chaos I came from. So when my boss told me I needed to fly to Riverside, California for a supplier showcase, I didn't complain. It was work, necessary. And honestly, after months of back-to-back stress, I figured a weekend away from the office might even be nice. I wish I'd trusted the uneasy feeling that kept scratching at the back of my mind. The place I was booked into was a mid-range highway hotel off Arlington Avenue, the kind with beige walls, worn carpets, buzzing hallway lights, and a front desk clerk who looked like he was counting the seconds until his shift ended. Nothing about the place screamed danger, just old, tired, and understaffed. I checked into room 314, tossed my suitcase on the bed, and tried to settle into the stiff mattress. The hotel smelled faintly of bleach and something damp, like wet carpet that never fully dried. That night I ordered takeout, watched some cheap reality TV reruns, and fell asleep fully clothed. Nothing strange happened, nothing terrifying. Not yet. I woke early, earlier than I ever do at home. Maybe nerves, maybe the stale hotel air. After showering and ironing my shirt, I headed to the showcase downstairs. I spent the entire morning shaking hands, smiling until my face hurt, and pretending to care about eco-friendly tape dispensers. Around 11:15, I ducked out to get a coffee from a cafe across the street. That's when I realized I'd left my cash upstairs. I didn't want to run my card for a $3 cup of coffee. So I headed back to the hotel, taking the stairs up to the third floor. When I turned the corner, I noticed a housekeeping cart parked halfway down the hall. Music played from a tiny speaker on the cart, an old Spanish ballad humming softly. My room door was cracked open. Not unusual, housekeeping was cleaning. But the second I stepped in, something felt off. The bed had been made, the towels replaced, but the envelope of cash I'd left on the desk was gone. I searched everywhere, under the phone, behind the lamp, even in the trash can. Nothing. A heavy frustration settled in my chest. I walked back into the hallway and approached the maid working a few rooms down. She was short, mid-50s, with deep lines on her face and tired, glassy eyes. Her name tag read, Lucia. "Hi," I said gently. "Did you clean room 314? She nodded. "Did you see an envelope on the desk? It had some cash in it." Her expression didn't change. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "Nada." I tried again. "It was right there. I know I left it. If you picked it up thinking it was a tip, that's fine. I just really need it back." Her eyes narrowed. Her hand slid almost unconsciously toward the pocket of her apron. A flicker of something, panic, guilt, passed across her face. "I didn't take anything," she snapped. "Nada. You're wrong." "I'm not accusing you," I said calmly. "Just asking." But she was already worked up. Her voice rose, sharp and defensive. "You think I steal? You think I'm a thief? I work here 10 years. Her accent thickened as she switched between English and Spanish, her hands trembling with anger. "Ma'am, please," I tried again. "I'm just trying to figure out what happened. That's all." She jabbed her finger toward my chest. "You're lying," she hissed. "Don't blame me for your mistakes." My patience cracked right then. "Okay," I said quietly. "If you didn't take it, then we shouldn't have anything to worry about." I walked straight to the front desk. The manager on duty, Mr. Callahan, listened to everything carefully. He asked details about the envelope, how much was inside, what bills, whether anything else was moved. He wasn't dismissive, but he wasn't emotional either, just focused. After 15 minutes, he nodded firmly and said, "Let me bring her in." When Lucia entered the office, she looked smaller than she had in the hallway. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. "Lucia," Callahan said calmly, "this guest has reported missing money." She glared at me. "He's lying." "Lucia," the manager repeated, firmer this time, "please empty your apron pockets." Her jaw clenched. She froze. Then her eyes darted toward me with pure hatred. Slowly, angrily, she pulled out a small wad of bills and threw them on the table. "There," she spat. "Take it." It was exactly the amount I'd lost. Mr. Callahan sighed heavily. "Lucia, I'm sorry. You know the rules." She stood abruptly, tears filling her eyes. "You ruined my job," she whispered to me. "You don't know what you've done." Before I could respond, she stormed out. Callahan looked exhausted. Your stay will be comped, Mr. Keller. Again, I apologize. But his words didn't settle the pit forming in my stomach. I tried to forget about the incident. I went to dinner with a couple of colleagues. We had drinks. Too many, probably. By midnight, I was buzzed but steady enough to get a taxi back to the hotel. The hallway was silent when I stepped out of the elevator. I remember thinking, I just wanted my bed. I slid my key card into the door. It beeped once. I pushed the door open, and something slammed into the back of my skull. Hard. I fell forward, catching only a blurry glimpse of the carpet before the world went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious. Minutes? Hours? When I woke, I was lying half inside my room, half in the hallway. My vision swam. Pain ripped through my ribs when I tried to move. My mouth tasted blood. Someone had beaten me brutally. My phone was under the bed. I crawled, literally dragged myself to reach it. Every breath was agony. I somehow dialed 911. Paramedics arrived fast. I remember the flashing lights, the cold air hitting my face as they lifted me onto the stretcher. I spent 3 days in the hospital, concussion, 2 cracked ribs, a fractured cheekbone, internal bruising. The police questioned me. Do you know who did this? I didn't answer right away. Lucia's face flashed in my mind. The hatred, the rage, the way she said, you ruined my job. But I shook my head. I didn't see them, I whispered. It could have been anyone. And that was the truth. Legally, I never saw the attacker. But deep down, I had a feeling, a strong one, and that feeling never left. Back in Tucson, everything felt different. My house didn't feel safe anymore. Every creak, every shadow, every unfamiliar noise put my nerves on edge. Nights were the worst. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, convinced someone was standing beside the bed. Other nights I'd dream of Lucia's eyes, burning, furious, full of wounded pride. Did she attack me herself? Did she send someone? Or was it just random violence at a rundown hotel? There's no way to know. No proof. No closure. But here's what I do know. You never really know what someone is capable of. Not until you push them into a corner. Not until you strip away their dignity. Not until you take something from them that they feel they can't get back. If I could go back, I would have walked away. I would have let the $65 go. I would have avoided eye contact, avoided confrontation, avoided everything that came after. Money can be replaced. Your safety, your peace, you don't get those back easily. Some grudges don't fade, some wounds don't heal, and some people break in ways you'll never see coming. All it takes is one moment, one accusation, one humiliation, one spark, and your life can change forever. Story 4. I never thought mopping floors for a living would teach me anything about people, but looking back now, I realize I learned more from strangers' houses than I ever did in school. I'm 43 now, but I started cleaning when I was 14, long before I understood the weight of the things people hide behind closed doors. My mother, Denise, ran a tiny cleaning company out of our apartment in Old Mill, Washington, a damp little town where the rain felt like it belonged more than we did. She used to say, if you can scrub someone else's toilet without complaining, you can handle anything life throws at you. I didn't believe her then. I do now. We were broke, permanently, hopelessly broke. Dad had left years earlier, and every dollar we made mattered. So after school, I'd ride around with her in her rust-colored Ford Escort, dragging vacuums through houses that smelled like lives I'd never have. Busy lives, happy lives, broken lives, all kinds. By the time I finished college, community college, nothing fancy, I'd practically grown up in other people's bedrooms. When Mom got sick, I took over the business. By 2011, Clearwater Cleaning Cooker was my full-time job and the only thing in my life that made sense. But everything changed the morning I got the call from Sutton Hill Drive. It was July 28th, hot already, the kind of dry heat that makes even the air feel exhausted. I just sat down at my desk with a lukewarm coffee when the office phone rang. Clearwater Cleaning, this is Mara speaking. There was breathing on the other end, shaky, uneven. Then a man's voice, rough and thin. Is this the cleaning service? The one that works in the North End? Yes, I said slowly. How can I help you? This is, I'm, my name is Thomas Hale. I live at 119 Sutton Hill. I, I need someone to clean a room. Today. It can't wait. His voice broke on the last word. I straightened in my chair. Something wasn't right. Did something happen, Mr. Hale? I need to know what kind of cleanup we're talking about. Another long pause, then quietly. My daughter, my, my only daughter. She passed away this morning. My heart dropped. He whispered, the police were here. They told me I had to call a specialized company, biohazard cleanup. But I can't afford $10,000. I can't even afford one. His voice dissolved into trembling breaths. Mr. Hale, I said softly, I'm very sorry for your loss, but I need to ask, was it? Yes. His voice cracked. It happened in her bedroom. I can't go in there again. I can't even look at the door. Grief is a strange thing. You can feel it even when it's not yours. It seeped through the phone line like cold air. I could have said no. I should have said no. We weren't certified. We weren't equipped. But something inside me whispered, he's alone. Help him. I'll come, I said before I could change my mind. Text me your address. The Hale house sat on a quiet street lined with tall pines. It looked like any other comfortable suburban home. Light blue siding, trimmed hedges, a basketball hoop in the driveway. But the moment I stepped onto the porch, the air shifted. Heavy, silent. The door opened before I knocked. Thomas Hale was maybe in his late 50s, but grief had aged him into something older. His hair was uncombed, gray at the temples, his eyes swollen and crimson. When he spoke, his voice sounded scraped raw. You're Mara? Yes, I said softly. Thank you for coming. His hands trembled as he stepped aside. Everyone else said no. I stepped inside. The house smelled like lavender and old carpet. Family photographs hung along the hallway. Birthdays, vacations, a girl with long, dark curls smiling on a beach somewhere. That's Emily, he said when he saw me looking. She was 16. I nodded, throat tightening. Where's the room? I asked. He pointed down the hall toward a closed door. His entire arm shook. I can't go near it, he whispered. I'm sorry. It's okay, I said. He retreated to the kitchen and sank into a chair, hands covering his face. I walked toward the closed door. Each step felt heavier. When I reached the door, I put on my gloves, took a slow breath, and turned the knob. The smell hit me first. Coppery, thick, unmistakable. Blood has a scent you never forget. The room itself was small, walls painted pale blue. A guitar leaned against the corner. Posters of indie bands covered the walls. A makeup bag lay spilled on the vanity. And on the bed, blood. Dark, dried, violent. It had painted the wall behind the headboard in a spray pattern that made my stomach lurch. I stepped back, hand over my mouth. I'd seen a lot in 20 years of cleaning. Neglect, hoarding, filth. But never this. I whispered to myself, oh God, Emily. I stumbled into the adjoining bathroom, gripping the sink until the nausea passed. When I finally steadied myself, I forced my feet back toward the bedroom. Back toward the stain that had ended a life. I needed help. Real help. I pulled out my phone and stepped into the hall. Mr. Hale, I called softly. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking small and lost. Sir, I said gently, I can't clean this. It's unsafe. You need a certified trauma team. He shook his head violently. I told you, I can't afford them. They want more than my car is worth. I don't have anyone. I don't have anything left. His voice cracked. Please, don't leave me alone with that room. I hesitated. Then I exhaled, stepped away, and called the only trauma company I trusted. A long conversation, a long negotiation. I offered something I shouldn't have. Half from my business, half from my own savings. When I hung up, I looked at Thomas. It's covered, I told him. They'll be here this afternoon. He froze. Then his face crumpled. He broke into sobs as he grabbed my hands. Why would you do that for me? He cried. Because, I whispered, no one should face this alone. The trauma crew arrived in full biohazard suits. I stayed to keep Thomas company. I couldn't bring myself to leave him in that house with only memories screaming from behind a door. For hours, we sat at the kitchen table. He told me about Emily, how she played guitar every night, how she wanted to be a sound engineer, how she'd struggled with depression since her mother died 2 years earlier. I thought she was getting better, he whispered. She laughed last night. She made pancakes. She asked if we could go to the coast this weekend. His voice broke. I didn't know that was her goodbye. From down the hall came muffled scraping, disinfectant spray, the sound of things being boxed and removed. At one point, Thomas flinched so hard he knocked over his water glass. I can't listen to this, he whispered. I moved my chair closer. You don't have to. An hour later, the lead technician walked into the kitchen. It's done, he said softly. The room is clean. Thomas didn't move. He didn't ask to see it. He just whispered, thank you. Before I left, I walked to the bedroom one last time. The walls were repainted with primer. The bed was gone, the carpet cut out, the smell faint but lingering. The room felt wrong, not because of the horror that had happened, but because of the emptiness left behind. Thomas stood in the hallway trembling. I can't step inside, he whispered. Not today. That's okay, I said. He wiped tears from his face. You saved me, he whispered. You don't know how much. I didn't feel like a savior. I felt hollow, heavy, sad in a way I hadn't been since my mother died. Before I left, he touched my arm. Can I ask just one thing? Of course. Don't send me a bill, please. I won't, I said. Not ever. And I meant it. For weeks afterward, I dreamed of Emily's room. Dreamed of the blood on the wall. Dreamed of Thomas collapsing into sobs. I'd wake at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, hearing the faint echo of a teenager's guitar drifting from a room that wasn't mine. I checked on Thomas twice more. The first time, he didn't answer the door. The second time, a neighbor told me he was staying with relatives. The house was dark inside, curtains pulled. I drove away slowly, a strange ache settling in my chest. People think cleaning is just bleach and rags. But sometimes it means walking through the darkest parts of someone's life and knowing you can't fix any of it. I didn't save Emily. I didn't save Thomas. All I did was clean a doorway between love and loss. A doorway I can still see every time I close my eyes. Story 5. I never imagined my last year of college would push me into scrubbing strangers' floors just to survive. I always thought I'd graduate with a steady job lined up, maybe move to a slightly nicer apartment than the one I shared with 2 other broke students. But life had a way of knocking plans out of my hands. I'm Marissa Hale, 23 years old, studying social work at Redwood Valley Community College in Northern California. I grew up in a small farming town outside Modesto, raised by a single mom who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. I thought things would ease up once I moved out, but college turned out to be an expensive dream. By March, my savings were gone. My part-time job at a bakery cut hours because business slowed. My rent was due in 5 days. My refrigerator held half a bottle of ranch, a bruised apple, and 3 eggs. I remember sitting in my car in the school parking lot, looking at my banking app with that sick feeling rising in my throat. $14.72. I wasn't scared of hard work. I was scared of failing. That's when my roommate, Tessa, mentioned her cousin worked for a small cleaning business called Sunrise Home Care, run by a woman who always needed more hands. She pays every Friday, Tessa said, leaning against our kitchen counter. Not amazing pay, but fast. You want it? I'll take anything at this point. She texted her cousin, and the next morning, I found myself standing in front of a small office suite between an insurance agency and a nail salon. Inside, the place smelled like lemon wipes and cheap air freshener. A woman in her late 40s stepped out, Lydia Grant, owner of Sunrise Home Care. Sharp bob, sharper eyes. You Marissa? She asked. Yes. You work hard? Yes. That's all I need. She handed me 2 polo shirts, a checklist clipboard, and a warning. Most houses are normal, some, not so much. If a client makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately. And don't work past sunset. We don't do night cleaning. Too many weirdos. She said it half jokingly, half serious. I didn't question it. My first few houses were manageable. Messy kitchens, toothpaste crust in sinks, laundry mountains, nothing I couldn't handle. But on my second week, Lydia called me before sunrise. I need you on Briarwood Street today. Client named Mr. Hollis. You'll be working alone there. Her voice had a strange stiffness I didn't quite understand. Uh, anything I should know? Pause. He's particular. Just clean what's on the list. Don't go into rooms he doesn't mention. And Marissa, be out before dark. She hung up before I could ask why. Briarwood Street was tucked on the older side of Redwood Valley, lined with 1960s ranch homes and sagging fences. But Mr. Hollis's house was different. A tall Victorian structure sat behind untrimmed hedges, its paint peeling like dead skin. The porch sagged slightly. A wind chime made from rusted spoons clinked in the cold air. I swallowed hard. When I knocked, the door opened almost instantly, like he'd been waiting behind it. He was tall, maybe late 60s, wearing a well-pressed brown sweater and slacks. Thin silver hair combed perfectly. His eyes were the strangest part. Sharp, fixed, like he was studying every movement I made. "You must be Marissa," he said quietly. "Come in." His house smelled like old paper and something metallic. The walls were lined with framed newspaper articles, missing persons cases, unsolved crimes, some yellowed, some newer. "You're only cleaning the living room, kitchen, and downstairs bathroom," he said, handing me a handwritten list. "No upstairs, no basement, understood?" "Yes, sir." He watched me the entire time, not close enough to invade, but never far enough to forget his presence. He didn't blink much. He didn't smile. He didn't speak unless I asked a direct question. When I finished wiping down the living room shelves, I noticed something odd. A family photo sat slightly turned toward the wall. I gently straightened it. The picture showed a younger Mr. Hollis with a woman and two kids. But the woman's face had been scratched out. Not scribbled, carved through the glass. I shivered. "You don't need to touch personal items," he said from behind me. I jumped. "Sorry, I was just dusting." He stared at me for a moment too long. "Some things should stay as they are." That was my first day. When Lydia handed me my schedule the next week, I felt my stomach dip. "You put me back at Briarwood. You handled it fine. Is there a reason no one else wants that house?" Lydia looked away. "People talk too much," she murmured. "Just go. And Marissa, don't open any doors that aren't on your list." Why did everyone keep saying that the second visit was worse? While scrubbing the kitchen sink, I heard something faint, like a thump. Then, another. I turned toward the hallway. "Everything okay?" I called. Silence. I continued wiping the counter. Then I heard it again. A soft murmur, a voice coming from further down the hall. I stepped toward the sound. "Hello, Mr. Hollis?" The voice grew slightly clearer, female, whispering rapidly, like begging. I froze. Before I could move, Mr. Hollis stepped out of the hallway, blocking my view. "You're wandering," he said, his voice low. I heard someone." "No one else is here." "But," his tone sharpened, "stay where you're supposed to." His eyes followed me for the rest of the cleaning. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that whisper. By now, I dreaded Briarwood, but I needed the money. Rent was due again. I was working every shift Lydia gave me. That Friday, a storm rolled in early. Sky bruised purple. I rushed through my tasks, trying to beat the darkness. "Marissa," Mr. Hollis said as I put away the mop, "I have an additional room for you today." I turned slowly. "What room?" He pointed down the hallway I'd never been allowed to enter. "The study, last door on the right." A cold wave flushed through my body. "Lydia said I'm only assigned to the front rooms," I whispered. He smiled. "For the first time. Lydia doesn't live here. I do." My hands tightened around the mop handle. I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The house seemed to exhale behind me. The air grew colder. The wooden floor creaked. The door to the study was slightly open. I pushed it gently, and the light from the hallway fell on something that made my chest seize. A small shoe. A child's shoe. Pink. Dusty. Something shuffled behind the desk. "Hello," I whispered. A soft gasp answered. My heart raced. I stepped closer, and a girl, maybe 13, emerged from behind the desk. Her hair was tangled, her face pale. She shook her head frantically. Please, she whispered. Please don't tell him you saw me. I froze. Are you hurt? She backed away, eyes wide. He hears everything, she whispered. Don't talk loud. What are you doing here? Does he keep you? Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Sure. The girl's eyes widened with terror. She ducked behind a cabinet. I spun around just as the study door opened. Mr. Hollis stood there, expression blank. Find what you needed? He asked quietly. My voice nearly failed. Just dusting. His eyes dropped to the floor, noticing the faint footprints the girl had left. You're thorough, he whispered. Maybe too thorough. I didn't wait. I squeezed past him, grabbed my things, and practically ran to the front door, muttering, I'll finish next week. He didn't stop me. He only watched me with an unreadable stare. I didn't want to go back, but Lydia insisted. It's the last cleaning of the month. Then I'll reassign you. But Lydia, there's something wrong with that house. She cut me off. He pays double. We can't lose him. I felt sick. I went. Because I needed money. Because I didn't want to lose the job. Because I told myself maybe I imagined the girl. I arrived an hour before sunset. The house was silent. Too silent. Mr. Hollis? I called. No answer. But the basement door, the one I'd never been allowed to open, was unlocked. Something in me said, look, now before it's too late. I pushed it open. The smell hit first. Damp concrete, mold, something sour. I stepped down slowly, phone flashlight shaking in my hand. Hello, I whispered. A sob answered. I turned the corner and saw them. Not just the girl from the study, but two more, frail, terrified, chained to metal rings bolted into the wall. My breath caught, my vision blurred. Please, the youngest whispered. Please help us. I moved forward. A creak on the stairs. A shadow stretched across the wall. Then his voice. I told you not to wander, Marissa. I turned. Mr. Hollis stood on the last step, holding something behind his back. His face calm, almost gentle. You remind me of someone, he said softly. Someone I lost. Someone I've been trying to replace. He stepped closer. You should never have opened that door. I grabbed a metal bucket near my feet and hurled it at him. He stumbled. I bolted past him, sprinting up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut and shoving a chair under the handle. He pounded against the wood. Marissa! I didn't look back. I ran out the front door into the street, screaming until neighbors opened their windows and called the police. The police arrived within minutes. With my statement and the neighbors' reports, they forced entry. They found the girls. They found evidence, photos, journals, restraints. Mr. Hollis didn't resist when they arrested him. He only watched me from the back of the patrol car, expression unreadable, lips curled in a faint smile, like he knew something I didn't. I haven't cleaned a house since. I still hear the girls' voices when I'm alone. I still dream about the basement, and no matter how much time passes, I can still hear the way he said my name. Story 6, I never thought cleaning houses would lead me into a nightmare I'd spend years trying to forget. My name is Emily Carter, and in the fall of 2016, when I was 19, I took a part-time job as a housekeeper in a small town called Ridgeway, Pennsylvania, a quiet suburban place where every house looked peaceful from the outside. People always assume that cleaning is easy. They don't see the exhaustion, the long hours, or the constant worry of making enough money to survive. I grew up in a tiny apartment in Erie, the oldest of 3 siblings. My dad was a truck driver who was barely home, and my mom worked double shifts at a diner. College wasn't something we could afford, so I tried to save every dollar I could. When I found an ad for Clean Sweep Services, a small local cleaning company, I applied the same night. The pay wasn't great, but it paid the bills. By my second month, my supervisor, Karen, started giving me solo assignments, mostly evening jobs in large homes whose owners worked late. It was usually peaceful. Just me, my cleaning cart, and music in my earbuds. But everything changed the night I was sent to 1121 Ridgeway Lane, a large two-story house owned by a wealthy businessman, Martin Hale. "Emily, tonight it's the Hale house," Karen told me, handing over the keys. "Big place, but easy job. Just floors, dusting, and the upstairs study." "Anyone home?" I asked. "Nope. Mr. Hale's out of town. Cameras are updated, alarm system's on. You're good." I nodded. "Got it." But from the moment I parked outside the Hale residence, something felt wrong. The house was massive, dark, and strangely silent, even for an empty home. Only the porch light was on, flickering every few seconds. I brushed off the uneasiness. I needed the money. Inside, everything looked expensive. Marble floors, tall portraits, spotless countertops. As I began wiping surfaces in the living room, I whispered to myself, "Just another job. Don't overthink." At first, everything went smoothly. I moved from room to room, humming softly, trying to ignore how quiet the house felt. But around 9:40 p.m., as I was vacuuming the hallway near the staircase, I heard something. A voice. A woman's whisper. "Stop! Please!" I froze. The vacuum hummed under my hand as my heart hammered in my chest. I pulled the earbuds out. Silence. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. "Is someone here?" Nothing. I swallowed hard. "Karen said nobody's home. There's no way." I forced myself to continue cleaning, but every room felt heavier, colder, like someone was watching me. When I reached the upstairs landing, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The study door, which I hadn't reached yet, was slightly open. Karen had said the alarm system automatically locked all rooms. I took a shaky breath. Maybe I just forgot closing it, but deep down I knew I hadn't been upstairs yet. I pushed the door gently. The study was dim. Just enough light from the hallway spilled in to show the large wooden desk and bookshelves. Papers were scattered across the floor. "What the?" I whispered. "It wasn't like this on the checklist." The room appeared ransacked. Then I heard it again. A soft sob. A quiet, broken whisper. "He hurt me." Chills shot up my spine. "Who's there?" I stammered, voice cracking. No answer. Only a faint sound, like someone breathing in the dark corner behind the bookshelf. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I stepped inside, gripping my phone. "If someone's hurt, I can help," I said. As I moved toward the bookshelf, the air grew colder. My fingers shook so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. I turned the flashlight on. The beam of light swept across the shelves, then landed on a woman, kneeling in the corner. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, and deep bruises marked her arms. She lifted her face slowly, her eyes hollow, broken. "Please, help me," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Oh my God! What happened to you?" She raised a trembling hand toward me. "He won't let me leave." "Who?" I asked, taking a step forward. Her lips parted. And then, footsteps, heavy, coming up the stairs. My blood turned to ice. The woman's eyes widened with pure terror. "He's here," she whispered. "Please, don't let him take me again." I spun toward the door. Panic surged through me as the footsteps grew louder, faster. I didn't think. I grabbed the woman's arm. "Come on, we need to move." But the moment I touched her, she went still. And then, her body flickered, glitched, like a bad video signal. And she vanished, right in front of me. I stumbled back, hitting the desk. "No, no, no, this isn't real. What the hell?" The footsteps suddenly stopped right outside the doorway. The doorknob turned, slowly. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat, but his face wasn't visible. It was as if shadows clung to it, refusing to let me see his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply stood there, blocking the exit. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Sir, I'm with Clean Sweep. I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to." No reaction. "Sir, I'm leaving now, okay?" Nothing. The room grew colder. My breath turned visible in the beam of my flashlight. I backed up slowly. Then he finally spoke, a deep, hollow voice that didn't sound entirely human. "You weren't invited." My knees nearly buckled. Sir, I'm sorry. Karen told me nobody would be home. I'll go right now." He stepped forward. I stumbled backward until my hip hit the desk. "Please," I begged. "I just work here. I didn't mean to." "Leave," he growled. "Now." I didn't hesitate. I sprinted out of the room, racing down the stairs so fast I almost fell. Behind me I could hear heavy footsteps, but I didn't dare look back. I grabbed my cleaning bag, my keys, anything I could, and burst out the front door. I dove into my car, locked the doors, and slammed my foot on the gas. As I sped down the street, I dared one glance in the rearview mirror. The figure stood on the porch, just watching me. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I kept replaying the woman's whisper, her bruised arms, the way she vanished as if she'd never existed. And the man, the shadow-faced man who shouldn't have been there. When I told Karen what happened, she stared at me for a long time before saying quietly, "Emily, that house has been empty for months." My stomach lurched. "What?" "Mr. Hale moved to New York last spring. He hasn't lived there since his wife died in that house." My breath froze. "His wife died," I whispered. Karen nodded. "Police said she fell down the stairs during an argument, but there were bruises, marks. People said it wasn't an accident." My hands trembled uncontrollably. "What about the cameras? The alarm?" Karen swallowed hard. "There are no cameras anymore. He removed everything after the investigation." I felt sick. I knew what I had seen, the bruises, the terror in her eyes, the whispered, "He hurt me," and the man in the doorway, the one she feared. For weeks I had nightmares of the study door opening, of footsteps following me, of a shadow watching from the corner of every room. I quit Clean Sweep the next month, and to this day I refuse to clean houses alone. Because somewhere out there, on Ridgeway Lane, in that beautiful 2-story home that looks so peaceful from the outside, something evil still lingers. A woman still cries for help, and a man made of shadows still watches the stairs. Story 7. I never imagined a cleaning job would leave a scar on my life so deep that even now, at 44, I still wake up drenched in sweat. My name is Hannah Cole, and back in 1998, I was a 17-year-old teen from Pineford, Michigan, a working-class town wrapped in quiet streets and cold winters. Nothing dramatic ever happened there. At least that's what I believed before everything changed. When my dad got injured at the paper mill and couldn't work anymore, our family income dropped straight into the dirt. My mom picked up part-time shifts at a bakery, but the bills kept piling up. I knew college wouldn't be an option right away. I had to help. That's when my aunt, Linda, suggested I try cleaning houses with her. She said elderly folks in Pineford trusted her, and she could use an extra pair of hands. "You're responsible, Hannah," she told me one evening, tying her hair back while washing dishes. "Helping seniors isn't just cleaning. Sometimes it's the only company they get all week." Back then, I didn't understand the weight of that sentence. I just knew we needed money. So I joined her small cleaning business, Fresh Care Home Services, and spent my senior year juggling school and work. Some days I came home with my arms aching, my clothes smelling like bleach and lemon polish. But I didn't mind. It felt like I was doing something good, something meaningful. By early winter that year, our client list had grown, mostly old folks living alone. My favorite was Mrs. Eleanor Briggs, a gentle widow in her late 70s, who lived on a narrow, quiet street called Willow Bend Lane. Her home smelled like lavender and old books, and she always asked about my school days. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she'd say, smiling softly. I liked cleaning her place. It gave me a break from the constant stress at home. But on December 12th, 1998, the world shifted beneath my feet. Snow had fallen the night before, covering the streets in a thick white blanket. Pineford was always quiet in winter, but that morning felt unnaturally still, as if the whole town was holding its breath. I knocked on Mrs. Briggs' door like I always did. "Mrs. Briggs, it's Hannah." No answer. I frowned and glanced back at the street. No cars passing, no dogs barking. Just the wind kicking up small swirls of snow. "Maybe she didn't hear me," I muttered and knocked again, louder, still nothing. A cold, prickling sensation crawled up the back of my neck. Mrs. Briggs never ignored me. She always left the door unlocked for me, but she also always greeted me at the front. I turned the knob. It opened. Inside, the air felt wrong, heavy, unsettled. "Mrs. Briggs?" I called again, stepping into the living room. No radio playing old jazz. No tea kettle on. No warm smell from her cinnamon candles. Just silence. I set my cleaning bag down and took a slow breath. "Okay, maybe she's still asleep," I whispered to myself. I checked the kitchen first. The mug she used the night before was still in the sink. That wasn't like her. She always washed her dishes right away. Then I walked down the hallway toward her bedroom, my boots creaking on the hardwood floor. The hallway felt narrower than usual, like the house itself was shrinking around me. And that's when I saw it. Her bedroom door was slightly cracked open, but not in a normal way. The top of the door frame looked scraped, splintered, as though someone had pried it with force. My heartbeat thudded painfully in my ears. "No, this can't be happening," I whispered. I reached out and nudged the door open. My breath left my lungs all at once. She was lying on the floor beside her bed, face down, motionless. Her robe was wrinkled, her slippers knocked across the room like she'd tried to run. The bedside lamp lay shattered near her hand. "Mrs. Briggs?" My voice cracked into pieces. I didn't move. Couldn't move. The world tilted and I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. Fear twisted sharply in my gut. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave her like that. I stepped inside, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "Mrs. Briggs, please," I whispered again, even though deep down I already knew. The coldness in the room told me she was gone, and not peacefully. A small shard of broken lamp lay near her head, stained dark red. I slapped a trembling hand over my mouth. "Oh God! Oh God!" My fingers fumbled for my cell phone as tears blurred my vision. When the 911 operator answered, my voice barely worked. My client, I think she's hurt. She's not moving. Please, please come fast." They told me to stay outside, not to touch anything. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on her body until I reached the living room. I stumbled out into the freezing air and collapsed onto the porch steps, shaking violently. Minutes later, red and blue lights reflected off the snow. Detective Riley Morgan, a serious man in his mid-40s, arrived first. He crouched beside me. "Miss Cole, you found her?" I nodded, unable to speak. Tears streamed down my cheeks. "Take your time," he said gently. A paramedic draped a blanket over my shoulders. Detective Morgan stood up. "Did you touch anything in the room?" No," I whispered. "The door looked broken. I just walked in and saw her like that." He exchanged a grim look with another officer. "Did she ever mention feeling unsafe? Anyone suspicious lingering around? Any break-ins?" I shook my head. "She was gentle. She never bothered anyone." The detective sighed. "We'll take it from here." But I could see in his eyes he already had a bad feeling. The crime scene team moved through the house for hours. I sat in the police car, watching them carry out bags of evidence. I felt sick. I felt responsible. I kept thinking, what if I'd come earlier? What if she called for help? When my Aunt Linda finally arrived, she rushed to me and held my cold hands. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry." I broke down, sobbing into her chest. The next few days were a fog of interviews, sleepless nights, and silent dinners at home. My mom kept trying to make me eat, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that room again. News spread fast through Pineford. Elderly woman found dead in home. Possible break-in. Detective Morgan updated us a week later. They had found footprints in the snow behind Mrs. Briggs's house, a size belonging to a man. There were signs of forced entry, but the house was in a quiet neighborhood. No one saw anyone strange. No one heard anything. And then came the detail that shattered me. Mrs. Briggs had likely been attacked sometime before I arrived. Maybe just hours before. "What does that mean?" I asked, barely breathing. Detective Morgan hesitated. "It means whoever did this may have still been in the area when you got there." Linda gasped. I felt the blood drain from my face. If I had walked in a few minutes earlier, if he hadn't left yet, I would have been next. Weeks went by. The police finally arrested someone, a drifter named Alan Riker, who'd been breaking into homes around the county. He had a history of violence. He confessed later during questioning. Justice was served, but it didn't feel like it. Not to me. Every time I picked up my cleaning supplies, my hands would shake. Every time I opened a client's door, my heart hammered, expecting another horror scene. One night, my dad found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at my untouched dinner. "Hannah," he said softly, placing a hand over mine. "You can stop working if it's too much." I wiped a tear away. "Dad, if I don't help, you and Mom, we'll figure it out," he insisted. "Your safety matters more." But I shook my head. No, I won't let fear take over my life. So I made a decision. I started taking self-defense classes. I bought pepper spray. I learned situational awareness, how to identify danger, how to stay alert. I wouldn't be a victim. Not again. Aunt Linda supported me completely. "You're strong, Hannah," she told me. "And what you did, calling for help, was brave." But bravery didn't feel like what I did. It felt like survival. I still clean houses, but differently now. I work smarter, safer. I double-check doors, keep my phone within reach, trust my instincts. Because that day taught me something I never forgot. Monsters don't live in stories. They walk quietly among us, even in the safest towns. And when I drive past Willowbend Lane, I slow down for a moment, close my eyes and whisper, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Briggs." I still remember, because remembering her keeps me vigilant, and maybe that's what saves me today. Story 8. I never expected that cleaning other people's homes would ever put my life in real danger. I've seen dirty houses, chaotic houses, houses with families falling apart. Nothing scared me. But what happened in September 2024 in a quiet Colorado neighborhood called Ridgeway Court was the kind of horror I still struggle to talk about. My name is Ivy Halstead. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 8 years, I've run a small cleaning service called Bright Hands Residential. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my rent, kept food on my table, and allowed me to take care of my little sister after our mother's stroke. Growing up in a worn-down duplex in Pueblo, Colorado, I learned early what responsibility meant. My dad left when I was 10. My mom picked up double shifts as a nurse, but after she collapsed at work when I was 21, everything shifted. I dropped out of college, found any job I could, and eventually started cleaning houses because the schedule was flexible and the pay was steady enough to keep us alive. That's the thing. I've always known struggle. Horror, that was something that belonged in movies. Not in my world. But on September 18th, 2024, it came for me. It started like any other Tuesday morning. Cool air, clear sky, a long list of clients waiting. I had 2 regulars in the morning and then an afternoon appointment that my scheduling app simply labeled as Ridgeway Court, Unit 12, Deep Clean, New Client. New clients weren't unusual, but something about the way the message was phrased felt rushed. No name, no intro, just an address. That should have been my first red flag. By 2:10 p.m., I pulled into Ridgeway Court, a quiet, older apartment complex tucked behind a line of pine trees on the west side of Colorado Springs. Paint peeling, balconies sagging, silent parking lot with only 3 cars. The kind of place where people kept to themselves. When I stepped out, I got that strange, crawling sensation on my skin. Like something was watching from behind one of the half-closed blinds. "Don't do this, Ivy," my gut whispered. But bills were bills. I grabbed my supplies and headed toward Unit 12. When I knocked, the door opened immediately, almost like someone had been waiting behind it. A tall, thin man in his late 50s stood there. Graying hair, eyes so hollow they didn't look real. "I'm Henry Doyle," he muttered. "You're the cleaner?" Yes, Ivy. Bright Hands Service." He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He simply stepped aside. "Come in," he said flatly. The way he spoke, it wasn't hostile. It wasn't welcoming either. It was empty. The smell hit me first. Not garbage, not rot. Something metallic, like rust mixed with old water. The living room was cluttered. Piles of old newspapers, dusty furniture, yellowed curtains that blocked out most of the sunlight. But it wasn't the mess that bothered me. It was the silence. Apartments always have noises. Neighbors moving, taps dripping, TVs humming. But here, it felt like the whole building held its breath. "Where should I start?" I asked. Henry's eyes flicked toward me. "The bedroom," he said slowly. "Deep clean, everything." His voice cracked on the last word. "All right," I nodded, though my stomach tightened. He pointed down a narrow hallway, then walked into the kitchen without another word. When I opened the bedroom door, a cold wave hit me like someone had opened a freezer. "This is weird," I whispered softly. The bedroom wasn't messy. In fact, it was the only clean room in the entire apartment. A neatly made bed, a dresser, a nightstand, a single frame photo face down on the floor. But the air felt wrong. Heavy, thick, like grief lived here. I bent down to pick up the photo. The glass was cracked across the frame. It showed a woman in her 30s smiling brightly, arms wrapped around Henry. They looked happy, too happy. I placed the photo on the dresser and started cleaning. 15 minutes in, I heard something. A soft whisper. "Ivy." I froze. I wasn't sure if it came from the hall or inside the room, but it was unmistakably close. "Hello," I called out. Silence. My heart pounded hard. "Calm down, Ivy. Probably the wind. Or a neighbor." But the air vent was sealed with duct tape. There was no draft. Then the bedroom door slowly closed. I jumped back. "Mr. Doyle?" I called louder this time. No response. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted it. It opened easily. But when I stepped into the hallway, Henry wasn't in the kitchen anymore. "Mr. Doyle?" Nothing. The apartment was empty. I should have left. Any sane person would have. But part of me thought maybe Henry was grabbing something outside, or maybe he had a health issue. After all, he looked pale. Maybe he collapsed. I walked toward the kitchen when I heard it again. Not a whisper this time. A woman's voice, right behind me. "Don't clean this place." I spun around so fast my knee hit the cabinet. Pain shot up my leg. The kitchen was empty, but now a new sound filled the apartment. A soft creaking, slow, rhythmic, like something swaying or someone hanging. My breathing turned shallow. "I need to leave," I muttered, grabbing my supplies. When I turned toward the front door, it was closed, locked. And the deadbolt, which I never touched, was latched from the inside. "No, no, no." "I didn't lock that," I whispered, my throat tightening. Something moved behind me, a soft thump, then another. Footsteps. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to turn around. But the footsteps grew closer. One step, two, three. "Ivy." My name spoken in that same soft woman's voice. I forced myself to turn. The hallway was dim, lit only by a weak bulb, and halfway down it stood a woman, her hair black and wet, dripping onto a floor that was dry seconds ago. Her head tilted slightly, her eyes dark and entirely lifeless. Her body swayed gently, like she was suspended by something I couldn't see. My blood turned to ice. She stared at me without blinking. I took a step back, whispering, Who are you?" Her lips parted. "Help me." Before I could move, before I could run, Henry appeared behind her, his face ghost white, eyes wide in pure terror. "You shouldn't be here," he choked, grabbing the woman's shoulders. But his hands went straight through her. His arms passed through her body. I dropped my cleaning spray bottle. It shattered on the floor. "What is happening?" I gasped. Henry stumbled backward, shaking violently. "She won't leave," he whispered. "She died in this room. My wife, Emily. The mold made her sick. The landlord ignored us. She suffocated in her sleep." He looked at me with haunted eyes. "I tried to clean up. I tried to move on. But she won't leave this place." Emily's head snapped toward him sharply, unnaturally. "No!" he begged. "Please." Then she turned toward me. Her voice wasn't a whisper anymore. "Don't clean this place." The apartment trembled. The lights flickered. The air grew colder until I could see my breath. Henry dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I shouldn't have brought you here. She doesn't want anyone touching her room. My vision blurred with fear. I need to go, I whispered. Emily's figure drifted toward me, her feet inches off the ground. She reached out with a pale, trembling hand. The moment her fingers brushed my arm, pain shot through me like burning ice. I screamed, collapsing against the wall. Stop! Henry yelled, stepping between us. It wasn't her fault. Leave her alone. Emily's face twisted, not in anger but sorrow. Deep, painful sorrow. Then the apartment went silent. Emily slowly faded, her figure dissolving into the dark like smoke. The air warmed. The apartment stopped shaking. The lights brightened. And Henry fell over. I called 911 with shaking hands. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Henry was alive but barely responsive. They said he had experienced a severe panic attack and possible heart arrhythmia. They asked what happened. I lied. I said he collapsed. I said he wasn't breathing right. I said I didn't know anything else. Because who would believe the truth? Ridgeway Court was shut down temporarily due to structural concerns. That's what the notice said. I never returned, never drove past it again. But every night that week, I dreamed of Emily, of her voice, of her cold hand, of that last warning. Don't clean this place. I quit my job for 2 weeks. My sister said I looked pale, thinner, shaken. I told her I was just tired, but some nights when the house is quiet and the lights are out, I swear I still hear her whispering my name, like she followed me home, like she's still waiting.